Okay, I'll call this public meeting to order. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent reflection for our servicemen and women throughout the world, and also for those who have passed away in our community. Please also keep in your thoughts tonight the 2 state troopers that were killed outside of Philadelphia early yesterday morning, as well as those in Ukraine who are fighting for democracy and freedom. Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Here.
Mr. Schuster?
Present.
Dr. Rothchild? Here. Mr. McAndrew?
Present.
Mr. Donahue?
Here.
I'd like to make a motion to table items 7B and 7C.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second to table items 7B and 7C. These resolutions are being tabled to allow for additional language to be included. All those in favor of tabling items 7B and 7C signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved. Please dispense with the reading of the minutes.
Third order, 3A, Controller's Report for the month ending February 28, 2022. 3B, Single Tax Office City Funds Distributed, dated March 11, 2022. 3C, Lackawanna County Planning Commission Subdivision and Land Development Evaluation Reports, reviewed February 16, 2022, February 28, 2022, and March 7, 2022. 3D, correspondence received from the Office of Economic and Community Development regarding code enforcement report for council complaints, dated March 15, 2022. 3E, minutes of the non-uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held February 16, 2022. 3F, agenda for the non-uniform Municipal Pension Board meeting held March 16, 2022. 3G, minutes of the Ethic Board meeting held January 19, 2022. 3H, Lackawanna County Planning Commission Subdivision and Land Development Evaluation Reports, reviewed March 11, 2022. 3I, minutes of the Scranton Municipal Recreation Authority Board of Directors meeting held March 3, 2022. 3J, memorandum from City Solicitor Jessica Esquire, dated March 8, 2022, to City Council Solicitor Sean Gallagher regarding city's insurance brokerage services. 3K, Single Tax Office Audit for the year ended December 31st, 2020, received March 9th, 2022. 3L, City Council Request Log for March 2022.
Are there any comments on any of the third order items?
Yeah, I have a couple. So, 3J, the letter we received on March 8th from the Law Department that states that they wanted to provide the City Council an update regarding the city's insurance brokerage services. Presently, the city's contract of insurance brokerage services is set to expire March 31st. And with it, the city's current policies for insurance will also expire. So, I'm working close to 40 years in industry. There's 2 things you don't mess with or jeopardize. That is someone's pay or benefits. So with that said, I want to know why that this hasn't been sent down sooner or the process started sooner. I want to know who's responsible and who dropped the ball. So Mr. Voldenberg, could you please inquire on behalf of council to the administration?
I will, Mr. McAndrew.
And then also 3L, our city council request log that I brought forward as a motion a couple weeks ago. I want to thank Mr. Voldenberg for compiling that list, which I said is our list. Now it's visible for all of you to see. Most of the concerns that are going to be on this list are brought to us through public comments, so I'm glad to see it. It'll be put in third order every once in a while, not weekly, and so you'll be able to see, your concerns and the progress of them and where we're at with them. That is all I have. Thank you.
Are there any other comments on any third order items?
Yes, just one other thing. Mr. Voldenberg, while we're sending correspondence about item 3J, could we just see, or could we just add to that correspondence to see what has been done in past years? What was the amount of time that this was usually put out for renewal?
I will, Mr. Schuster.
Are there any other comments on third order items? If not, received and filed. Do any council members have any announcements at this time?
I have one announcement. So next week for our caucus, Answer will be coming in, and that's the firm that we contracted with for the ARPA funding planning, and they've been really helpful. Last week, all the council members are being invited to meet with them and the mayor so they could explain their process and what they've done to help us in our planning process for that funding. And I'm happy that they'll be coming in next week so that the public could hear from them. If you have any specific questions for them, just like a few weeks ago, what I mentioned for the strategic economic planning, if you had questions ahead of time prior to the caucus that you would like, things you would like to hear from them, then you're welcome to send that in to us. You can send them to Mr. Voldenberg, and we'll make sure to get them to them prior to the meeting. Thank you.
Do any other council members have any announcements?
I have two. First, I'd like to thank DPW not only for the job they did with the storm that we had a week ago, Saturday. I thought they did a really good job getting the city cleaned up under difficult circumstances. And then in preparation for the parade, I thought they did a great job setting up and getting the city ready for the crowds. And I was very impressed that I think it was probably by 2:30, 3 o'clock, they already had street cleaners downtown and they were cleaning up. So I just kudos to DPW. I thought they did a really good job, along with the Scranton police, who did a nice job protecting the area of the parade to make sure that the streets were blocked. And, we've all seen situations where there's huge festivals in downtowns, and, we've seen some things where some people sometimes will try to crash the party with a car or a truck or something. And I think our police did a tremendous job to ensure the safety of all of the citizens who were participating in the parade and who were there to watch the parade. Also, I was speaking to one of my neighbors today, and he mentioned, I know that Earth Day is Friday, April 22nd, but on Saturday, April 23rd, they're trying to get groups together to help out with a huge cleanup at Naog Park. I know he's working to try to get some students from some of the local schools, and so I just wanted to announce that they're going to be looking for some volunteers. As I find out more information about that, I'll get that out there. And I know there will be a lot of neighborhood cleanups as well. So that's it.
Thank you. Any other council members have any announcements?
I have a quick one. So this Saturday, March 26th, from 11:30 to 1, the Hickory Street United Presbyterian Church at 435 Hickory Street in Scranton will be having a free Irish stew dinner. Include Irish stew, Irish soda bread muffins, and butterscotch apple cake. All are welcome. In addition to that, they're going to have bags of groceries from the food pantry that will also be distributed. That is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Do any other council members have any announcements at this time? I just have one. In preparation for Jog for Jude, which will be Saturday, April 23rd, this Friday, which is the organization's Pink and Blue Day, where everyone's encouraged to wear either pink or blue. There'll be a happy hour at Backyard Ale House from 6 to 8. A $10 donation is encouraged, and guests are also encouraged to bring baby clothing and or toiletries for the St. Joseph's Baby and Children's Pantry, which has been lovingly dedicated in Jude's name. And that's all I have. Mr. Voldenberg?
Fourth order, citizens' participation.
First on the list is Joan Hodowanitz.
Joan Hodowanitz, Scranton. I was very pleased to see that the summary of fiscal affairs was published last week, very timely, and thank you for doing that. There were a couple years where that was totally missed, so I was happy to see that happen. Any progress on the union contracts?
They're still in negotiations.
Okay, we're on day 81, which means 22% of the year is already gone. I hope we won't have any unpleasant surprises. Also, today is March 22nd, which is the 35th day for acting treasurer Mitesh Patel. So tomorrow, who is the city treasurer?
We received legislation today appointing that will be on our agenda for next week, appointing
Okay.
Mr. Patel.
All right, that's what I thought would happen. Good. I too was very happy to see the city council log was a 3L. I was noting about the status of the database on real estate taxes and the refuse fees. That's an important database and very useful to the general public and also to you as legislators. If somebody's going to come up to be appointed to a board or a commission, first thing you do is you check, are they current on their taxes and fees? But I think that's something that should be maintained in perpetuity. But then I'm one of those strange people, I like to look at numbers. Speaking of numbers, did you all get to check out the February Controller's Report? You know, it's very educational. For most people, their eyes just glaze over. Oh, numbers. I don't need to look at that. But have you any idea what the controller reported for the month of February that we spent on salt? Doesn't mean that we actually salted in February, but this is when the bills came due. You want to guess what we spent on salt in that 1 month or recorded for it?
Was it $177,000?
$175,158.99. We've actually budgeted for this year $500,000 for salt. And you're right, DPW does do a very good job reacting to these ice storms. But, that surprised me. I couldn't really appreciate that, it just boggled my mind. But then there was another figure which boggled my mind. For the month of February, what was recorded in interest earned. You have any idea? Would you believe 28 cents? Look on the summary of revenues on the very few first pages. 28 cents. It makes me feel so much better when I open my bank statement for my checking account, I'm not the only one making pennies. 28 cents. And let's see. Also, I looked at the funds distributed by the single tax office on March 11th, and they're still recording business and privilege and mercantile tax. When will we eventually transition to reporting payroll preparation tax? Would that be like the second half of the year?
Yeah, so that will actually come from Berkheimer
Okay.
and not from the single tax office.
Okay, that'll be interesting to track that for the first year. I saw the minutes of the Municipal Recreation Authority, and they want to bring back horseback riding. I will never get on a horse, but I hope that they bring it back for those who would like to do such a crazy thing. But I don't recall ever having horseback riding there when I was a child. So this may be a new thing. And your insurance brokerage services memo. That struck a nerve with me. Are we talking about the Knowles Insurance Company for property and vehicles and everything?
Yes.
Well, they didn't make the emergency legislation for today. Next week, they'll have 2 days, or you're going to shut down all those vehicles and buildings. Basically, are we going to have to accept whatever is offered to us as a contract because we have no time to negotiate?
That's my understanding.
I
yes.
am not happy with that.
I'm not
Not
either.
happy at all. I agree with you that we need to find out who dropped the ball, what happened. And remember, we've had trouble with the list of properties and insurance. You remember how we ended up insuring the Albright Memorial Library for 7 or 8 years and the city didn't even own it? Gotta watch those details or they'll take us to the cleaners. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the list is Doug Hine.
Good evening, council members. Thank you for your time. My name is Doug Hine. I reside at 1204 Mulkey Avenue on East Mountain. My family and I have lived there for the last 24 years, with my wife's family being there for the last 50 years. Mulkey Avenue is a narrow two-way street, wide enough in some spots for only one vehicle, especially in the 11 and 1200 blocks. It's a quiet residential neighborhood and is a dead-end street. Several houses have families with small children and pets. I'm here to discuss with you tonight a vacant lot addressed 1214, 1216 Mulkey Avenue, owned by Mr. Jeff White. My issue is the dumping of fill on Mr. White's property. Soil and used asphalt are considered clean fill by the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. Unused asphalt, however, does not meet this definition. On March 16th, approximately 10 large dump trucks, I'm not sure if they were double or triaxle trucks, my daughter was home at the time, from a local company dumped a mixture of soil, used asphalt, and unused asphalt on Mr. White's property. I brought pictures if you'd like to see it, of what was dumped. The company was contacted late that afternoon and said the dumping would stop, which they did the next day. The unused asphalt can be seen at the top of the piles in these pictures I took, but there's no way to be certain that they didn't mix it in when they were grading the lot after they dumped. When I got home that night about 5 o'clock, all I could smell was the pungent smell of the petroleum in the asphalt, and my property was 4 away from this empty lot. The road was left covered with dirt from the trucks going in and out all day. I called Mr. White, whom I had considered a friend, to complain about the situation. He came and looked at it and said there was nothing wrong because it was all clean fill, they graded it, no problem, and he's unwilling to do anything about it. I contacted DEP this morning, by the way, and they said that they will look into it. I told them there is a waterway, I don't know if it's a creek or what it is, that runs along the side of that property. They were going to look into that and possibly call the inspector's office to have them look in it. Many of the neighbors have complained to Mr. White over the years, over the last few years about this, as the company that dumped last week, along with other people, have been allowed to dump clean fill, along with construction debris, including tiles still on the backer board, a toilet, garbage, concrete with rebar in it. Some of it's been removed, some of it's just been buried when other things get there and pushed over. My family contacted the city inspectors last May. They came out to inspect the property, but we were never told what came of that. Mr. White lives in another part of the city. He doesn't have to deal with the trucks coming in and out. He doesn't have to deal with the smell, the dirt. It's a quiet residential neighborhood. It's not a construction zone. And the neighbors and my family, we're pretty much fed up with it. What I'm asking, I guess, is for a city inspector to be sent out to the property, evaluate the situation, see what's been dumped, and produce a report for remediation. We deserve an end to this. You can look at this.
If you could leave them with Ms. Carrera there, and okay, and if you want to leave your contact information too, as soon as we hear back from the city inspectors, we'll reach out and let you know what we heard.
Okay, like I said, they're going to
Okay.
call the city, but they said if there's an issue with the waterway, that raises it to another level, and they will
Yes.
investigate themselves.
Okay, and we'll see what, the city's done to date too on your complaints.
Okay.
All right?
All right, thank you for your
All right,
time.
thank you very much. Next on the list is Ron Ellman.
council. My council, if I were president, I would give the Ukrainians a blank check to buy back everything that we left there. Guns, tanks, and everything. Then I'd get the Taliban to bring them over to the capital. They have beaten the Russians once, and they can go out their back doors right through Russia like Sherman to the sea. That's just a wish, I guess. These people are barbaric. There's no stopping them. I don't know why they're being quiet right now, unless they just waiting for our next move. And speaking of barbaric ventures, this despicable reassessment encouraged by our two commissioners, who I'd like to add, each of them have 4 jobs, 4 full-time positions. This shouldn't have been allowed to start with, but one of them is sponging off the taxpayers that they hate. They have no respect for the taxpayers of this city and county. They're at war with us. And if they'd done their job the last couple of years, nobody since Janet Evans has addressed these phony, I guess is a good word, these phony nonprofits hiding behind the Pure Charity Act. I don't know what's supposed to be done about it now. Every time you look at the paper, there's somebody else buying something for large sums of money and taking it off the tax rolls. How many houses have to pay for these losses? And the only answer anybody seems to have is raise taxes, raise taxes. Nothing's being done anywhere from the state all the way down through the county to the city. And one other thing. I mentioned a few months ago the gentleman that was killed in front of my house on North Main Avenue by a speeding car. North Main Avenue is like a racetrack, 24/7. There's cars doing 60, 80 miles an hour. And at Wells and North Main, there's where the school bus stops twice a day for children. Cars clip the sidewalk. Where 2 feet of the sidewalk, these children wait for the bus is gone from speeding cars and tractor trailers. There should be a stoplight or maybe a 4-way stop. Something needs to be done. Are y'all waiting for another tragedy like that happened in front of my house? And one other thing before the hook comes out for me. Almost every week there's a false alarm at the DuPaul building. Last night there was, I think it was this morning, there was 3 fire trucks there and the fire car. This goes on continuously. One of the ladies tells me everybody knows who's doing it, and the next week it still happens, and it goes on and on. They're going to be there one day for nothing, you know, when something ought to be done. And you, my friend, you should print what people in here talk about. They're not interested when they read the paper about these accounts and taking it from this account. They want to know what these people that take their time to come in here are saying. Because I hear this every once in a while. Somebody says, what did y'all talk about, or what did so-and-so say? It just takes you a couple seconds to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ellman. That exhausts the sign-in sheet. Would anyone else like to address council this evening? Thank you.
Tom Coyne, Manuka. What I just handed you now is a little spreadsheet, a flow chart of procedures. This is not in any way, as last week, meant to be an attack on the process. It's not meant to say that there is irreparable damage. What is meant to say is, by this flow chart, we have Rule 10 and Rule 13 separate in the ordinances, in the rules, for a very specific reason. And there is a flow chart of how stuff is supposed to go through City Council. The bills itself that came forth are completely irrelevant. They aren't part of my argument from last week. It was a matter of pointing out to the attention that in this flow chart, we skipped across 3 separate patterns of actual proper procedure per the laws. And it's not anything that needs to be remedied. It's just something I wanted to bring forward because there is a specific flow chart and pattern for how things are supposed to work. And a number of times in this city, not particularly with this branch of the government, but others, those flow charts, patterns, and procedures are ignored and modified by fiat. This body has complained about things coming to it with no notice, with short notice, that do not follow procedures. And I'm just bringing to attention that there are procedures that are out there that I would hope this body looks at and addresses a little bit closer. Not that it intended to, but the path might have been a little bit in error. Now getting to the second part off of this, because that was just putting forward that it is not directed at a specific ordinance or regulation, it's just procedural. How can the city miss an insurance deadline? How can the city miss any contract end? We have Microsoft Word where you can put ticklers on it. Every contract should be in a database. Every contract should be flagged that it give warning beforehand. Emails, notifications. This is grade school or high school pop-up saying your homework is due for this assignment 3 weeks from now. This is not rocket scientist. This does not take an MBA. This does not take a master's. This takes someone actually using a scheduler. All of these contracts, every contract in the city, has a start date and an end date. And an adoption of a start date on it, it should be put in immediately where that end date is, not relying upon extensions or anything else. And at that end date, notification a week, 3 weeks, 3 months beforehand. Obviously not a week, because that does not allow it to go through process. It should have at least 5 weeks, 1 to put it in, 1 to negotiate, and 3 before this body is absolute minimum. But that isn't done. And again, we are here at an emergency order that suddenly comes into place. How many emergency orders has this body seen this year for processes that should have been handled beforehand, that information should have been shared with this body, that this body should have been aware beforehand that this due date was coming up? There is no inter-office communication between one side and the other if these are being missed. And that is a serious detriment to this body, to the government, and the people it represents. And I hope we do not continue to have people in this body who are being paid for, who cannot schedule an end of contract, because that is just unfathomable. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Coyne. Would anyone else like to address council this evening?
I have a little article here. I'd like to give it to you first.
Okay.
Pass it on. Alrighty. Just mentioned about vehicles, and that is on an editorial from the Times, and there was another article on it. I picked that one. You're almost twice as likely to be run over by a pickup truck or SUV than by a car. And there's reasons. They don't see in front of them. They see above people. Okay. Now, on the redistricting, we're kind of saved by the Supreme Court of Pennsylvania, but it's not a dead issue. And I've been following what's going on in other states, and many people in our state have similar ideas. Everything from calling it a crime to vote and not notifying people they're not eligible to vote and then arresting them later, and all types of lovely stuff. So I hope we stay on that and make sure that we have the right to vote someday. And in 7 different states, Pennsylvania included, there was a fraudulent elector sheet sent to Washington, D.C. And Mr. Barletta and Mr. Mastriano's name is on them, saying that the Republican candidate won. Now, they put a little disclaimer on Pennsylvania's, but there's 5 states that actually said that Donald Trump won the election in 2020. So this is really serious. We don't need this. And a few weeks ago, we applied for a grant with Spruce Street. Please, no bicycles downtown. If you want to fix things up, great. But we don't need it turned into a memorial park. And it's liable to be a memorial park with tombstones on it. It's tough enough. When you turn the corner down at Wyoming Avenue in front of the mall, either left or right, if the sun is in a certain position during the day, and there's been 3 or 4 people killed there, you cannot, it just blocks your whole windshield out. So I really don't think bicycles are a great idea in a busy downtown, and that's all there is to it. We have trails, we have everything else. We're spending money all the time. We have parks. Let them go riding there. I used to go ride out in the woods. I just got something with fatter tires. I didn't like dealing with the cars even in the neighborhood. And I would like to point out that, and I think Marie could vouch for this, sometimes during the Doherty administration, it was months something was being done, and then we had an ordinance adopted. Months. Sometimes 6 or 8 months somebody was hired, and finally they said, oh, well, let's get this passed. So, let's get council's approval. And it was usually written up all on the same night. And finally, on Ukraine, I got a brainstorm the other day. I fully support us shipping them everything they need and more. But, with all the trouble that our police department has catching people on ATVs, wouldn't it be great if we sent them 1,000 quiet ATVs so they could raid the Russian camps and get out of there in a hurry? And I actually literally called Congress. So if you're out there in TV land, think about it. Give them a call. Have a good night.
Thank you, Mr. Dobson. Would anyone else like to address the council this evening?
Good evening, Council. Marie Schumacher. I guess first I best start off because I think 7A is, I have some real questions on it, but I'm sure you guys have the answers. This is an objective of a contract to raise the profile of Scranton as a desirable location to do business, work, live, and to inspire business investment and attractive/retain talent. Now, where are we on that now? Can anyone on there tell me what our position is now? Or to foster a brand that welcomes collaboration, community, and celebrates the new future of work. What do we do in that area now? Nothing? Encourage migration from high-priced coastal cities. Can you tell me how many have migrated here from high-priced coastal cities in the last 3 years? I mean, objectives without matrix are just useless. How could anybody ever judge on what was done, how well, if you don't know where you are now, how do you know when you get to where you're going if you don't really know where you're going? We have to start looking at our contracts and our bidding things as well. And speaking of that, I think that the seventh, the third J, 3J, I believe that letter said to ask something about meeting with you all on the day of bidding, which I believe was the 21st. Did anybody on this body meet with, while the bids were coming in? Or with the law department?
We did not, no.
You were invited?
No.
Was it? Okay. Okay, yeah, that's pitiful. There's nothing else to say about it. But now moving on to what is on the beginning of the website about what you would do with the ARPA money. I'm glad something was done, but unfortunately, I think there are some shortcomings on it. For instance, I think the timing is too much. Or too little. I think it should be longer because what is not put in there is what is the total amount of money that we have. You're asking how many dollars you would spend in each of those categories, and you should come out with, and then we have 2 years worth. Are some, you're just looking for this year, or are you looking for both years?
So there's not 2 years worth, it's one total batch. It all has to be spent or under contract by the end of 2024.
Yeah.
It just comes in 2 separate batches.
Yeah, but would have been nice to put that number on as a given, I think. And I also think that it would have been nice to have some demographics. You certainly don't want to ask people to give their names, but it would be nice to see how many people who are in certain age brackets, what section of the city they live in, how long they've lived in Scranton, and if they own or rent a property, and that would be helpful a little bit. Plus, how has it been marketed? I mean, how many people, this is a good question too, yeah, how many people go to the website in a day?
I could find that out for you.
Okay, I think you might want to look at that too, but there's been absolutely, as that I've seen, I read the paper every day, and I have not seen anything in the paper. Hasn't even been announced here, has it?
Yeah, I think it was announced last week.
It was announced last
Yes.
week?
And there should be an update to it that should either have hit today or tomorrow. I have to check and see if that covers the demographic question that you had
Okay.
asked.
Okay, my
All right.
time's up. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address council this evening? Mr. Voldenberg?
Fifth order, 5A motion.
Mr. King, do you have any motions or comments this evening?
I don't.
Mr. Schuster, do you have any motions or comments?
The only comment I have, I think several citizens have made it, members of council have made it, is on 5J. I'd like to say that, if I didn't express it earlier, I am disappointed that we're at this point with this insurance piece. We'll see how it affects the rates, if it affects the rates, and I mean, at this point in time, we will find out tomorrow, but disappointed in this. That's all.
Thank you. Dr. Rothchild, do you have any motions or comments?
Just one. I also wanted to point out that I'm in agreement on 3J, that this is something we should have received previously. It appears that the deadline was missed, or the upcoming deadline, and so I'm glad that we'll be able to get the emergency declaration in time, so that they can choose an insurance broker prior to the contract's end. Wonder what's going on out there. Yeah, I think that it will be hopeful with the introduction tonight of the OpenGov piece, so that that could hopefully help prevent this from occurring in the future. And those systems already should have been in place so that they had the reminders of when contracts would be ending. So I'm not sure why. I'll be looking forward to hearing answers on that, because this shouldn't have happened. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. McAndrew, do you have any motions or comments?
Okay, so all of a sudden, the weather got nice and the ATV season has started. A couple concerned residents came to me the past couple of days voicing their concerns that there was a couple ATVs, very brazen riders, doing wheelies up and down Main Avenue and West Side. So, almost causing an accident with one resident, which is pretty scary. So I think we shouldn't have to wait till someone gets really hurt to take more action. I know that we passed some legislation maybe a year and a half ago that prevents the ATVs from coming to a gas station to have their tanks filled. I don't know how much of that has been a deterrent. I know we voted for that because it kind of made sense. But Mr. Voldenberg, since we now have a new police chief, would you please inquire to Chief Carroll and ask him, voice the concerns I just mentioned, that, starting up again. I'd like to know maybe he has a different strategy moving forward to curb this brazen illegal behavior. Maybe, he's in contact with other municipalities that have a different strategy or have things that seem to work better for us, will work better for us with this ongoing issue. And then secondly, I want to reiterate and go back to 3J. I want to know who dropped the ball, all right? Moving forward, we can use technology, but, contracts have been around a long time. I don't think we need technology to know when they're due and when they need to be renewed. So I want to know who dropped the ball. I want to know, with this potential, the potential lapse of coverage, and I want to know why this renewal wasn't done in a timely manner. But I definitely want to know who's responsible, so we can get a better look at this. And that is all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. In terms of 3J, I'm also disappointed that this is the case, but at the same time, we cannot, we're put between a rock and a hard place because we can't let our insurance coverage lapse in terms of casualty and liability. I am hopeful that, and it's my understanding that 5C on our agenda tonight will help track that in terms of a procurement software through OpenGov. It doesn't only help with putting out RFQs and RFPs, but it helps with contract management. As long as I've been on council, we've had issues with automatic renewals in contracts, where in the contract it will say that, a contract auto-renews if that vendor isn't notified within, 90 days before the end of the contract. Where I'm also hopeful that this legislation 5C will be helpful towards that as well, because we have gotten into situations where it auto-renewed, contracts would auto-renew because we didn't meet that 90-day notification requirement. So I am hopeful there. It was great to see so many people out over the weekend at the St. Patrick's Day Parade. Finally, hopefully a sense of normal. It was great to see smiles on people's faces, and the weather was beautiful. We did receive some complaints that we have gotten updates on. One was some graffiti that happened in the 800 block of Coyle Place. Chief Carroll did respond to Mr. Voldenberg's inquiries on that, because we got a few calls to our office. And his update was that Scranton officers did investigate the 800 block of Coyle Place. They attempted to contact the two reporting parties by phone and by knocking at the residencies, with no contact being made. They did identify 8 properties that could sustain graffiti damage to garages and or fences. They photographed the graffiti that was visible, though some property owners had already cleaned up the damage. They did speak with one victim who had a trail camera in his yard. It detected a shadowy figure passing in the area of damage and shows the presence of no graffiti and then the presence of graffiti. The images were deleted prior to officer arrival, but a verbal report was given to officers. The photographs were uploaded. So they are working on that, and if anyone sees something, please report it to Scranton Police. We also got a complaint about a sinkhole on Lafayette Street. Mr. Voldenberg first reached out to DPW, who checked it out and said that it was on private property, so then it was sent to code enforcement. Code enforcement's going to go look at it, and if there's any issues, they'll send it along to the mine reclamation office down in Wilkes-Barre to also check it out. But we are following that. Also, I got a complaint that asking if we could look into why the SPD website, cityprotect.com, that lets you see real-time crime stats, has not had data updated since December 13th, 2021. The complaint said, according to SPD, it's an IT issue. And, they just went on to say that especially with a recent uptick in violent crimes in the Hill section, it's imperative that the citizens of the city can see the data, as not everything is published in the news. So, Mr. Voldenberg, I'll forward you along this complaint. Could you check with both IT and the police department to see what the issue is with the crime reporting function on the website?
I will, Mr. Donahue.
Thank you. We also got some complaints regarding the 400 and 500 blocks of Taylor Avenue. There was I believe there was a shooting there over the weekend, and also having issues in terms of drinking parties and large crowds. We did receive word back from Chief Carroll that they are currently investigating the incidents. They've spoken to code enforcement, and he will also be reaching out to the resident who made that complaint. And that's all I have for this evening. Mr. Voldenberg?
5B, for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor, Office of Economic and Community Development, and other appropriate city officials for the city of Scranton to execute and enter into an agreement with Perdaric Excavating, Inc. to provide demolition of hazardous properties within the city of Scranton.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5B be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5C for introduction, a resolution authorizing the mayor, Office of Economic and Community Development, and other appropriate city officials for the city of Scranton to execute and enter into an agreement with OpenGov, Inc. to provide procurement software services for the city of Scranton.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5C be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question?
On the question, I just want to reiterate what I had mentioned before about this piece, where I really think that it's going to help with our tracking for these contracts, but I was also happy to see some of the metrics of how it could help us with saving and just becoming more efficient with the RFP and RFQ process. So I'm looking forward to these software services for the city. That's all. Thank you.
Anyone else on the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5D for introduction, a resolution, appointment of John Jack Rieger, 1116 Grandview Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18509, to the position of Information Technology Director, effective March 7th, 2022.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5D be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second?
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
5E for introduction, a resolution, appointment of Kaylee Marion Pekulski, 910 Marion Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18509, to the position of Human Resources Director, effective January 11th, 2022.
At this time, I'll entertain a motion that item 5E be introduced into its proper committee.
So moved.
Second.
On the question? All those in favor of introduction signify by saying aye. Opposed? The ayes have it, and so moved.
6th order, no business at this time. 7th order, 7A, for consideration by the Committee on Community Development for adoption, Resolution Number 31, 2022, authorizing the Mayor, Office of Economic and Community Development, and other appropriate city officials for the City of Scranton to execute and enter into an agreement with Press Record Communications to provide marketing and public relations support for the Office of Economic and Community Development, City of Scranton.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Community Development?
As chairperson for the Committee on Community Development, I recommend final passage of item 7A.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, I just want to speak to this and underscore the importance of this piece to me, and just explain why I'll be voting in favor of it. So in the past, we've had programs through OECD that I don't believe have been as successful as they could have been because of people just not knowing about the programs and how they could benefit from them. And many of these programs are meant to reach to underserved communities or low-income households. They provide housing opportunities, and I don't believe that we've been necessarily reaching those communities in the best way. And so I believe that this marketing contract would help us to do that and to really make the most out of these programs and to make people aware of them. So for that reason, I think it's important that that our city is able to market these programs, and I'll be voting in favor of it. Thank you.
Anyone else on the question? Just briefly, I do agree with what Dr. Rothchild said, and we have to start promoting ourselves better to the outside world, and I think this is a small first step, but it is a first step, and I'll be supporting this resolution. Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes, I hereby declare item 7A legally and lawfully adopted.
7B was previously tabled. 7C, previously tabled. 7D, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for adoption, Resolution Number 34, 2022, reappointment of Catherine Carney, 828 South Irving Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18505, as a member of the Historic Architectural Review Board, effective February 9th, 2022, and will expire on February 9th, 2027.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7D.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
7E, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 35, 2022, reappointment of Richard Leonori, 848 North Irving Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18510, as a member of the Historic Architectural Review Board, whose term will expire on October 11th, 2027.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7E.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. Sorry. I hereby declare item 7D legally and lawfully adopted.
7F, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 36, 2022, reappointment of Robert Timlin, 325 Warren Street, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18508, as a member of the Scranton Redevelopment Authority for a 5-year term effective February 14, 2022, and will expire on February 14, 2027.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7F.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7F legally and lawfully adopted.
7G, for consideration by the Committee on Rules for Adoption, Resolution Number 37, 2022, appointment of Augustine Fahey, 727 North Irving Avenue, Scranton, Pennsylvania, 18510, to serve as a member of the Planning Commission for the City of Scranton, with his term expiring on December 31st, 2024.
As chairperson for the Committee on Rules, I recommend final passage of item 7G.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
Yes.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Yes.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7G legally and lawfully adopted.
7H, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for Adoption, Resolution Number 38, 2022, authorizing the City of Scranton to accept $50,000 from Lackawanna College to hire a finance director in the City of Scranton in the 2022 budget year.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of 7H.
Second.
On the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
No.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
No.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7H legally and lawfully adopted.
7I, for consideration by the Committee on Finance for Adoption, Resolution Number 39, 2022, amending Resolution Number 44, 2020, entitled, Authorizing the Mayor and other appropriate city officials to accept the award of grant funds from the Willery Foundation in the amount of $50,000 to undertake a study to evaluate tax policy, billing, and collections with the goal of increasing collection rates, strengthening internal controls, eliminating waste, and providing tax relief for Scranton residents. To repurpose the $50,000 in grant monies to obtain and utilize a finance director in the City of Scranton in the 2022 budget year.
What is the recommendation of the chairperson for the Committee on Finance?
As chairperson for the Committee on Finance, I recommend final passage of item 7I.
Second.
On the question?
On the question, just to reiterate what I said last week, this grant here, the purpose of the grant was to undertake a study to evaluate tax policy, Billing and collections with the goals of increasing collection rates, strengthening internal controls, eliminating waste, and providing tax relief for Scranton residents. I would have been in favor of the original purpose.
Anyone else on the question? Roll call, please.
Mr. King?
Yes.
Mr. Schuster?
No.
Dr. Rothchild?
Yes.
Mr. McAndrew?
Nope.
Mr. Donahue?
Yes. I hereby declare item 7I legally and lawfully adopted.
Eighth order, 8A, file the council number 9, 2022.
This piece of legislation is the updated zoning ordinance. It is still tabled to allow for additional input and any changes. I know we are making progress towards that end. Once we have a final amendment sheet, that will be posted, and I'm assuming that will also have to go back to county planning for an additional 30-day review there before it comes back to us. If there's no further business, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.